We gaze upon the world's greatest wonder as crown of human achievement, monolithic masterpiece of stone and gold that seem to defy the very concept of time itself. From the towering peak of the pyramid to the simmering marble for grand palace, we celebrate the sight as triumph of the human spirit, but behind the beauty and the staggering scale lies a much darker, more bloody reality. To build something meant to last forever is to challenge the natural order of life and death, a defiance that many ancient civilizations believe came with a terminal task. These are the places where the foundations were laid in blood and the words were sealed with warning intended to echo through eternity. They are not merely tourist destinations, they are sacred log, guarding spirit and secret that were never meant to be disturbed by the modern eye. There is a profound melancholy that clings to the monument, a heavy, lingering shadow that whispers of architects who paid with their life and emperors who bartered their souls for a seat among the gods. Today, we are looking past the grandeur to face the silence. We are exploring the ten world wonder guarded by terrifying curse, where the price of immortality was often far more than any empire could afford to pay. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate masterpiece of the ancient world, a 6 million-ton mountain of limestone and granite that has outlived every emperor, every religion, and every king that dared to claim the earth. It is the only member of the origin seven wonders still standing, a silent, monolithic witness to 4,500 years of human history. To the casual observer, it is a miracle of engineering, but to those who have studied its darker history, the pyramid is something far more ominous. It is a giant stone lock, designed to seal away a royal soul and protect it with a power that was never meant to be released. This is the origins of the wrath of the pharaohs, a legendary she that was not merely a myth for children, but a terminal warning intended to echo through eternity. The atmosphere within the Great Pyramid is defined by a heavy, ancient silence that feels almost physical, as if the millions of tons of rock above you are pressing down, not just on your body, but on your very spirit. When you climb through the narrow, suffocating ascent of the grand gallery toward the King Chamber, the air grew thin and the modern world felt like it has evaporated entirely. Here, in the heart of the desert, the pharaoh Khufu sought to build a bridge to a star, a sanctuary where his car, his life force, could reside forever. To protect this transition, ancient priests were said to have laid down powerful execution texts, ritual intended to strike down anyone who dared to violate the sanctuary. Ancient inscriptions in nearby tombs warn that any intruder will find the neck of their bird wrung like a goose, and that death will come on wings of shadow. For centuries, the pyramid remained sealed, a prodding titan watching over the sand. However, the allure of the treasure removed to be hidden within proved too great for human greed. In the ninth century, the Caliph Imam forced his way into the pyramid using battering rams and fire. While he found no gold, legends suggest he released something else, a burning tension that's begun to haunt those who followed in his footsteps. Early explorers often reported a sense of sudden, inexplicable madness or a feeling of being watched by invisible eyes in the absolute darkness of the inner chamber. There is a profound melancholy in this story, the idea that those who sought to steal from the past only succeeded in bringing a piece of its darkness back into the light. The curse took on a more modern, terrifying shape during the golden age of Egyptology. While Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun is the most famous example, the Great Pyramid has its own totally of strange misfortune. Numerous archaeologists and visitors who entered the king's chamber reported sudden, violent illnesses or fell into deep, somber depressions that they could never quite explain. From a candid, scientific perspective, we now know that the ancient airtight chamber can harbor domains spore of toxic mold, such as aspergillus flavors, which can cause fatal respiratory failure. To the ancient Egyptians, this wasn't just biology, it was a biological weapon, a living curse designed to execute the intruder from within their own lungs. Today, the Great Pyramid remains a masterpiece of serene gloom, a structure that demands respect other than curiosity. It serves as a reminder that the pharaoh did not view their tomb as a museum for the future, but as fortresses for the afterlife. The wrath of the pharaohs is the ultimate price of immortality. It is the shadow that guards the light of the stars. Artist and beneath the massive shadow of Giza, you realize that the pyramids weren't built for us to understand. It was built to endure, and the curse is simply the oceans of time reminding us that we are but a fleeting ripple on its surface. It is a silent, stern sentinel, reminding very visitor that some kings never truly stop ruling, and some doors are meant to stay closed forever. The Taj Mahal stands today as the ultimate paradox of human emotions, a simmering white marble tear on the cheek of time that is celebrated globally as the supreme monument to love. Bathed in the soft glow of the Indian suns, its perfect symmetry and ethereal beauty suggest a divine grace, a place where grief was transformed into something celestial. But beneath this veneer of romantic grandeur, like a story of profound melancholy and a legacy of blood that many believe cursed the very empire that raised it. To build the Taj Mahal was to attempt to capture the infinite, but in doing so, imperial Shah Jahan may have invited a darkness that eventually evaporated the glory of the Mughal dynasty. The origins of this wonder is rooted in a devastating, haunting sorrow. In 1631, Mumtaz Mahal, the imperial beloved wife and inseparable companion, died while giving birth to their 14th child. Legends say that Shah Mahal was so paralyzed by grief that his hair turned snow white overnight, and he cloistered himself in silence for months. When he emerged, he was obsessed with a single, impossible goal: to build a tomb so beautiful that the world would never forget his loss. For 22 years, over 20,000 stone carvers, calligrapher, and laborer worked under a blistering sun to realize this vision. The grandeur of the result is undeniable, but it was a masterpiece built on the foundations of human exhaustion and imperial vanity that bordered on madness. The curse of the Tamahar is born from a terrifying legends of cruelty that haunt the history of its construction. It is whispered that once the final stone was laid and the building stood in its blinding perfection, Shah Jahan's obsessed turned into a dark paranoia. He reportedly ordered that the hand of the chief architect and master craftsman be served, and their eyes put out, to ensure that they could never recreate a rival to the tarred beauty. While historians debate the literal truth of this mutilation, the story itself represents a brooding tension that hang over the site, an idea that such absolute beauty could only be protected by an act of absolute horror. This betrayal of the very people who built his dream is said to have stained the white marble with an invisible, spiritual death, a curse of architect heartbreak that would soon turn back Urban the Emperor himself. A tragedy of the curse manifested with chilling speed. Shortly after the Tamahar was completed, the Mughal Empire, then at the peak of its power, began to fracture from within. Shah Jahan's own son, Aurangzeb, launched a bloody coup, murdering his brother and seizing the throne. In a twist of bitter irony, the emperor who built the world's most magnificent palace was imprisoned for the final age there of his line in a small room in the Agra fort. From his window, he could do nothing but stare across the Yamuna River at the Tamahar, watching his masterpiece from a distance, a prisoner of his own creation. There is a stifling gloom in this image, a broken king gazing at the tomb of his wife, realizing that his pursuit of eternity has cost him his family, his freedom, and his empire. Today, the Tamahar remains a masterpiece of imperial melancholy, a building that feels as much like a Scots story as its royal temple. The rapid decline of the Mughal power following Shah Jahan reign is often seen by locals as proof that the Tars was a poisoned gift to history. It reminded that the line between devotions and obsessions is dangerously thin. As you walk through its silent garden, the grandeur of the white dome is breathtaking, but there is a lingering sadness in the air, a reminder that the most beautiful things in our world are often paid for in the currency of suffering that time can never truly repay. It is a monument that achieves immortality, but in doing so, it left behind a shadow that still chills the heart of those who know its secret history. For 6 centuries, the Forbidden City stood at the heart of the Beijing like a crimson fortress, a sprawling labyrinth of 9,000 rooms designed to be the literal center of the universe. To the outside world, it was a place of divine mystery, where the sons of heaven ruled over a quarter of the world populations behind walls that no commoner could even look open without risking death. Its golden tile roof simmered like a sea of fire under the suns, representing the pinnacle of imperial Chinese grandeur. But this wonder was born from an arc of dark, imperial betrayal, and many believe it was cursed from the very moment its foundations were laid in a bed of blood and paranoia. The story of the curse begins with the Zhonglor Emperor, the third ruler of the Ming dynasty, who moved the capital to Beijing after a brutal and bloody civil war against his own nephew. To summon his power, he commissioned a police so vast and so complex that it would intimidate even the guard. Over 1 million laborers were forced into service, and thousands perished under the weight of the massive stone block and the freezing winter of the north. There is a profound melancholy in the city's origins. It was a masterpiece of isolation, built by a man who trusted no one and sought to create a guide cage where he could rule in absolute. Terrifying saluted the very name, the Forbidden City, suggested a place that was meant to be closed to a natural flow of life, a sanctuary that would eventually become a tomb for the dynasty that created it. The heavens, it seemed, did not approve. Just months after the city was officially inaugurated in 1421, a series of massive fires, ignited by lightning streak that many saw a device around, ripped through the three main ceremonial halls. They were the most sacred structure in the empire, and their total destruction was seen as a terrifying verdict on the younger imperial range. The fires were the first manifestations of a brooding tensions that would haunt the palace for the next 500 years. Instead of a place of light and governance, the Forbidden City became a theater of haunting sorrow, where Imperial rarely left the palace ground, becoming prisoner of their own ritual and the labyrinth politic of the eunuch and concubine who lived in the shadow. As the century passed, the curse of the Ming manifested in a cycle of paranoia and stagnation. The palace walls painted the color of dry blood, witnessed countless poisoning, secret executions, and the slow rot of a dynasty that has lost touch with the world outside. That a somber masterpiece of grief in the story of the thousands of women who lived and died within these walls. Never having seen the world beyond the Red Gate, their life evaporated into the service of a ruler they might never even meet. The air in the inner courtyard is often described as feeling heavy, and is the collective weight of 600 years of hidden tear it trapped within the stone. The final act of the curse arrived in 1644, as the Ming dynasty crumbled under the weight of rebellion and invasion. The last Ming emperor, Chongzhen, found himself utterly alone in his 9,999 room palace. As the rebel armies breached the city gate, he did not seek to fight or flee. Instead, he climbed a small hill overlooking his majestic home and hanged himself from a pagoda tree. It was the ultimate, melancholic, and a dynasty that has bartered its souls for grandeur of the Forbidden City. The palace remained, but the spirit of the Ming has been extinguished, leaving behind a legacy of ghosts and a silence that still chills the heart of the modern traveler. Today, the Forbidden City is a museum, teeming with tourists and cameras, yet it has never truly lost its haunting atmosphere. Even under the bright light of the 21st century, there are sections of the palace where the temperature seems to drop and the shadows seem to linger just a second too long. It stands as a masterpiece of imperial gloom, a reminder that power, when grasped in absolute isolation and built urban foundations of suffering, eventually become its own prison. The Forbidden City achieved its goal of lasting forever, but it did so by becoming a beautiful red wall sanctuary for the dead, a monument to the world that was too grand to survive and too cursed to be forgotten. The Great Wall of China is often described as a sleeping stone dragon, a monumental spring of brick and granite that winds its way across thousands of miles of jagged peak and desolate desert. It is the ultimate symbol of China's resilience, and the only human structure visible from the high reaches of orbit, a masterpiece of ancient grandeur that was designed to protect an empire from the chaos of the outside world. But to the millions of souls who were dragged to the northern frontier to build it, the world was known by a far more ominous and melancholic name, the longest cemetery on earth. It is a wonder that was not merely built urban land, but forged from the blood and born of a people, creating a legacy of restless spirit that many believe has cursed the very ground in staying urban. The story of the world's dark history begins with the first emperor, Queen Shi Huang, the same man who commissioned the Terracotta Army. His observed with security and immortality led him to order the identifications of existing fortifications into one continuous barrier. For the peasantry of ancient China, a summon to the world was essentially a death sentence. It is estimated that over 1 million people perished during its construction, dying from exhaustion, starvation, and the brutal, unforgiving winter of the high mountain. Yes, a profound sorrow in the archaeological reality of the war, because the work was so urgent and the terrain so difficult. There was often no time for proper burial. Legends whisper that the body of the fallen were simply tossed into the foundations or sealed within the hollow sections of the wall itself, turning the structure into a literal, thousands-mile-long tomb. The most famous manifestations of the work is found in the legends of Lady Manjing, a story that has haunted Chinese culture for over 2,000 years. It is said that her husband was snatched away to work on the wall just days after their wedding. When winter approached and he did not return, she traveled thousands of miles to bring him warm clothes, only to find that he has already died of exhaustion and was buried somewhere inside the massive stone structure. Her grief was so powerful, and her cry so filled with a burning rage, that a massive section of the wall suddenly collapsed, revealing the skeletal remains of thousands of workers. This legend served as a masterpiece of historical melancholy, representing the collective pain of a nation that saw its family evaporated into the surface of a stone world that seemed to have no end. This history of suffering has created a haunting atmosphere that lingers over the more remote, white sections in the Great Wall. Travelers and locals often speak of a stifling gloom that descends when the sun goes down, claiming to hear the rhythmic sound of phantom footsteps or the distant muffled cries of men echoing through the wind. There is a sense that the world is not just a defensive fortification, but a spiritual cave, holding the restless energy of a million souls who were never given a proper farewell. The grandeur of the world silhouette against the sunset is breathtaking, but for those who know its secret, that beauty is stained by the knowledge that every brick was paid for with a human life. From a candid's perspective, the curse of the Great War is a testament to a staggering cost of imperial ambition. The world succeeded in its goal of lasting for eternity, but it did so by becoming a monument to human endurance and state sponsored cruelty. It is a masterpiece of isolation and tragedy, a structure that was built to keep enemy out but ended up trapping the sorrow of its own people within its own heart. The longest cemetery remains a place of profound reflection, where the wind whistling through the watchtower felt like a long, low sigh from a past and refused to stay buried. Today, as millions of tourists walk along the restored section of the world, they are treading upon the most ambitious graveyard ever conceived. The Great Wall stands as a reminder that the greatest wonder of our world are often the heaviest, built by those whose names have been forgotten but whose presence is still felt in the cold, unchanging stone. It is a wonder guarded by the silence of a million ghosts, a haunting witness to the moment when the nations decided that safety was worth more than the life of those who provided it. Deep in the emerald heart of the Yucatan Peninsula stands Chichen Itza, a sprawling stone masterpiece that served as the spiritual and political source of the Mayan Empire. At its central rests the Temple of Kukulkan, a pyramid so geometrically perfect that during the equinox, the sun creates the shadow of a serpent slithering down its depth. It is a wonder of celestial alignment and architectural grandeur. But the true mystery of Chichen Itza doesn't lie in the sky, it lies in the dark, stagnant depth of the earth. Just a short walk from the Great Pyramid is the sacred cenote, a massive natural sinkhole that the mayor believed was a direct portal to Sibarba, the underworld. It is here that the curse of blood and water was born, a legacy of sacrifice that many believe still haunt the limestone ruin to this day. The atmosphere of the sacred cenote is defied by a heavy, primeval melancholy, while the rest of Chichen Itza is bathed in the harsh Mexican suns. The cenote remained wrapped in shadow, its vertical wall sheer and sleek with moss. The water below is a deep, opaque green, hiding a somber masterpiece of tragedy. For centuries, during time of drought or crisis, the mayor sought to appear check the god of rain by casting their most spirituous procession into the abyss. But they didn't just throw gold and jade, they threw bubble. Archaeological dredging has uncovered the skeletal remains of hundreds of victims, many of them children, who were cast into the dark water as messengers to the god. There's a haunting sorrow in the silence of the cenote, a sense that the water has never forgotten the terror of those final desperate flung. The legends of the Mayan curse took on a more modern shape in the early 1900s when an American named Edward Thompson purchased the land and began dragging the cenote for treasure. Using a massive crane and later diving into the depths himself, he pulled out thousands of artifacts, including gold bell, copper disc, and human bone. However, Thompson's success was met with a series of brooding misfortunes. He was accused of theft by the Mexican government. His property was eventually seized, and he died in a state of financial and legal ruin, far from the treasure he had spent his life unearthing. Locals began to whisper that the spirit of the cenote, the sacred messenger, who were never meant to be disturbed, has followed his home, demanding a price for the gold he stole from the house of Chuck. There's a unique wonder in the collage of Chichen Itza itself. By the time the Spanish arrived, this massive city has already been largely abandoned. Its people evaporated into the surrounding jungle. Historians point to climate change and catastrophic drought, but the folklore suggests a more spiritual decay. It is as if the cycle of sacrifice eventually turned on the city itself, leaving behind a stifling gloom that reclaimed the temples. The curse of Chichen Itza is often felt by modern travel by a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread when standing near the edge of the pit. It is the weight of the civilization that tried to bargain with the underworld and felt that the god of the deep always demand more than we are willing to give. Today, Chichen Itza is one of the most visited sites in the world, a marvel of Mayan mathematics and astronomy. But as the crowd gathered to watch the shadow of the serpent at sunset, the sacred cenote remained a place of profound isolation. It stands as a reminder that the most impressive wonders are often centered around a void, a dark, wandering silence that holds the secret of a thousand lost lives. The curse of the sacrificial cenote isn't a hate found in an old book. It is the lingering echo of a people who believed that the only way to save their future was to feed their past to the abyss. The Colosseum of Rome stands at the Artemis Cathedral of stone and shadow, a massive tear monument to the power, engineering, and terrifying bloodlust of the Roman Empire. Known anciently as the Flavian Amphitheater, it was designed to hold 50,000 screaming spectators, all gathered to witness the grandeur of death as entertainment. It is a masterpiece of architectural precision, yet its foundations were literally saturated with the lifeblood of over 400,000 people and a million animals. This concentrated history of suffering has left behind more than just a wound. It has created a brooding atmosphere that many believe is guarded by a curse of the blood-stained saint, a spiritual residue that makes the Colosseum one of the most haunted structures on earth. The atmosphere of the Colosseum is defined by a heavy, monumental gloom. Even in the bright Mediterranean suns, the interior of the arena feels cold, as if the stones themselves are still absorbing the heat of the violence they witnessed 2,000 years ago. To work through the hyperdrium, the dark, subterranean tunnel where gladiators wait in the damp silence for their turn to die, is to experience a profound, stifling melancholy. These men were the superstars of their age, that they were often little more than slaves. Their life evaporated for a single afternoon of applause, and cursed of the arena is the collective weight of these unfinished life, a haunting sorrow that lingered in the corridor where the dying were dragged away from the light. During the Middle Age, long after the last gladiator has fallen, the Colosseum took on an even more ominous reputation. It was no longer seen as a feat of engineering, but as a portal to the underworld. Locals believed that the arena was haunted by the ghosts of the thousands of Christian and condemned prisoners who were executed there. It was whispered that the site was a gathering place for witches and sorcerers who sought to harness the energy of the dead found within its wall. There is the somber masterpiece of historical dread. At this period, the once great stadium became a terrifying, skeletal ruin that the people of Rome feared to enter after sunset. The grandeur of the Flavian dynasty has been replaced by a secret, terrifying isolation, as if the earth were trying to reclaim the stone through a cycle of fear. The curse of the Colosseum is also felt in its physical survival. Over the century, it has been struck by lightning, torn apart by earthquake, and looted for its marble. Yet it refused to crumble entirely. It stands as a silent, stone witness to the collapse of the empire that's built in. Many speak of a brooding tensions when visiting the site today, a feeling of being watched by thousands of invisible spectators from the empty tire. There are accounts of visitors hearing the rhythmic clashing of steel or low, guttural roar of animals echoing through the stone arches when the wind is just right. It is a place where the barrier between the past and the present feels dangerously thin, as if the arena is perpetually waiting for one final, the bloody spectacular to begin. Today, the Colosseum is crown jewel of Italian tourism, yet it remains a place of profound reflection. It is a monument that achieves its goal of lasting forever, but it did so by becoming a temple of the macabre. The curse of the blood-stained saint is a reminder that the price of Roman immortality was the total dehumanizations of those who were forced to build and die within its arches. It stands as a melancholic poem in storms. It reminds that while empire fall and civilization change, the echoes of human suffering are far more difficult to erase. The Colosseum is not just a wonder of the world, it is a haunting masterpiece of consequence, showing us that the most magnificent stages are often the one where the tragedy never truly ends. Deep in the emerald heart of the Cambodian jungle stands Angkor Wat, a stone masterpiece so vast and so intricate that it was designed to be a literal microcosm of the Hindu universe. Built in the 12th century by King Satyavaman II, its five central tower represent the peak of Mount Meru, the home of the gods, while its massive moat symbolizes the cosmic oceans. It is the largest religious monument ever constructed, a feat of engineering that used more stone than all the Egyptian pyramids combined. But the grandeur of Angkor Wat hides a history of spiritual transitions and a curse of silence that saw one of the world's most sophisticated civilizations evaporate into the tree, leaving behind a kingdom of gods and stone. The atmosphere of Angkor Wat is defied by a powerful and spectral melancholy. To work through its gallery at dawn is to experience a stifling gloom, where the intricate bas relief of celestial dancer apsaras seem to watch you with unblinking, stone eyes. The curse associated with the site is often linked to the concept of the Devarager, or God King. Legend tells of a fell king, a ruler who sought to outside the gods themselves, bankrupting the empire, sparing and resources to build monuments to his own ego. Whether it was the origins builder on the later Jayavarman VII, who covered the city with his own stone face, the results were a civilization pushed to the brink of collapse. The silence that now hung over the ruin in the price paid for the pride that dared to replicate heaven on earth. A specific, haunting sorrow it found in the legends of the Leper King. Near the center of the ancient city of Angkor Thom stands a terrace topped by a mysterious, moss-covered statue. Local folklore whispered that the king who built it was cursed with leprosy as a divine punishment for his arrogance, or for offending the spirit of the land. This image of the decaying, diseased monarch ruling over a simmering city of gold creates a somber masterpiece of irony. It reflects the reality of the Khmer Imperial final days, a once mighty power suffering from internal decay, shifting religions, and a collapsing irrigation system. There is broadening tensions in the way the jungle has reclaimed the stone, with the massive root of silk cotton tree triangling the temple like the finger or a vengeful deity. The fall of the Angkor was not a single, violent event, but a slow, inevitable surrender to the element. By the 15th century, the great city, once home to nearly 1 million people, was largely abandoned. The curse of silence, who took as the sophisticated canal system fell and the population migrated south, leaving the city of Temple to be swallowed by the vines. There is a deeply moving isolation in the discovery of the site by Westerners in the 19th century. They found a world where the statue of Buddha has been placed over the altar of Venus, and where the hall of power were occupied only by the sound of bass and the rustle of the leaf. It was a city that has achieved immortality in stone, but at the cost of its living pools. Today, Angkor Wat is the soul of Cambodia, a symbol of national pride that appears on the country flag. Yet, it remains a haunting witness to the fragility of human ambition. The grandeur of its tower, reflected in the still water of the moat, in the melancholic poem about the limit of power, it serves as a reminder that if even the most divine creations are subject to the law of nature, and that the silence of the jungle is the ultimate response to the noise of kings. It is a place where the past is not dead, but merely waiting, dropped in grease and anchored by the weight of 1,000 years of secret. Hidden deep within the wind-sculpted canyons of southern Jordan lie Petra, the royal red city that was lost to the Western world for nearly 1,000 years, carved directly into the vibrant, blood-red sandstone cliff by the Nabateans over 2 millennia ago. Petra was once a thriving trade metabolist, a hidden fortress where the wealth of the earth, incense, silk, and spice flow like water. It is a play of staggering architectural grandeurs, reachable only through the thick, a narrow, windy gorge where the cliff raised hundreds of feet on either side, almost blocking out the sun. But the beauty of Petra is inextricably linked to the curse of desert spirit and ancient dread, a legacy that turned a bustling capital into a masterpiece of isolation and silence. The journey into Petra is a psychological experience defined by a brooding, spectral tensions. As you walk the 3/4 for a mile through the thick, your modern world seems to evaporate, replaced by a sense of being watched by the very rock themselves. At the end of the dark, claustrophobic path, the canyon opens suddenly to reveal the most famous structure of all, Arcanis, or the treasury, is Hellenistic facade, carved with haunting precision into the cliffside, glow with an ethereal light. However, the name is a misnomer born of local legends and great. Bedouin tribe long believed that an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, pursuing the Israelite, used black magic to construct the building as the vault of his treasure. This legend created a haunting sorrow for the monument. For generations, local fire wreathed as a storm atop the facade, hoping to break the curse and release a shower of glow, only to be met with the cold, silent dust to sandstone. Beyond the treasury, the city reveals a much more somber reality. Petra is not just a city of home, but a city of tomb. Thousands of burial chambers are carved into the mountain faces, their dark, yawning entrails looking like unblinking eyes. The Nabateans share a deep connection with the spiritual world, and throughout the city stand domed block, massive monolithic stone cubes that were believed to house powerful, unpredictable priests or deities that guarded the city boundaries. There's a profound desert melancholy in the structure. To the local who live in the surrounding cave today, the ruins are still a place where the barrier between the living and the spirit world is thin, and the curse of the dim is a reality that demands repast and distant after the sunset. The fall of the Petra was a masterpiece of slow, inevitable decay. As Roman trade route shifted to the sea and a series of catastrophic earthquakes in 363 AD shattered the city's sophisticated water system. The grandeur of the Nabateans began to wither. By the 7th century, the city has been largely abandoned, its locations becoming a secret guarded fiercely by local tribes. For nearly a millennium, Petra was a ghost city, a stifling gloom setting over its empty theatre and abandoned temples. When the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt finally rediscovered in it 1812, he had to disguise himself as a Muslim scholar, fearing that the local would kill him for disturbing the spirit of the pharaoh treasury. Today, Petra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a wonder of the world. Yes, it has never truly lost its haunting, sacred atmosphere. Even as thousands of tourists ride camel through its dusty street, the higher reach of the high place of sacrifice remains silent and heavy with the weight of ancient ritual. With curse of Petra is the curse of being forgotten. It is a reminder of how quickly a global superpower can vanish into the desert haze, leaving behind nothing but stone echoes. The restaurant city stands as a melancholic poem written in sandstone, a reminder that wealth and power are fleeting as a desert mirage. It is a place where the grandeur of man has been reclaimed by the wind and the wind, a haunting witness to the time when a civilization's carved its soul into the mountains and then simply disappeared into the shifting sands. In the middle of the vast, churning blue of the South Pacific lie Easter Island, a Rapa Nui, the most isolated inhabited spot on the planet. It is a tiny speck of volcanic rock where civilization once achieved the impossible, carving and transporting nearly 1,000 monolithic stone giants known as moai. These statues, with their elongated face and brooding brow, stands as a testament to an incredible era of artistic grandeur. But the story of Rapa Nui is not one of triumph, but it is a sombre masterpiece of self-destruction. But it is the site of an ecological curse where the obsessions with immortality led a people to systematically dismantle their own paradise, leaving behind a graveyard of fallen gods. The atmosphere of Easter Island is defined by a stark, windswept melancholy. To stand at the edge of the Rano Rakaku quarry is to see history interrupted. Hundreds of moai remain in various stages of completion. Some still have carved into the volcanic top, others abound on ancient rock as if their transporters simply drove their tools and walked away. There is a haunting sorrow in this sight. It feels like a city had evaporated in a single day. The curse of the Moai is the curse of the manor. The spiritual power the Icelander believed reside in the statue. To capture this power, the clan completed to build larger and grander Moai, a race for British that required an unsustainable amount of timber and resource. The tragedy reached its peak when the island's forests were finally exhausted. Without trees, there were no canals for fishing, no rope to move the statue, and no protections for the soils. As the environment collapsed, the society descended into a terrifying cycle of famine and tribal warfare. The revenge of the Moai manifested in the period known as Huri Moai, the toppling of the statues. In the lift of brooding rage and despair, rival clans began to knock down each other's stone giant, often designed so the statue would land on their face, breaking their neck and extinguishing their manner. There is a profound, heavy gloom in the image of this one mighty guardian lying face down in the dirt, blind and broken by the very people who worship them. The curse of Rapa Nui is often seen as a warning for the entire planet. It is a masterpiece of isolation and consequence shadowing what happened when the society prioritizes our grandest or its monument over the survival of its environment. When the first Europeans arrived in 1722, they didn't find a flourishing empire. They found a starving populations living in the shadow of their fallen ancestors. The air on the island carried a haunting, sacred tensions, a reminder that the Moai were not just statues, but the literal face of ancestors who were supposed to protect the land, yet ended up witnessing its ruin. Today, many of the Moai has been painstakingly restored to their platform, looking out over the sea with astonishing, inscrutable silence. But the feeling of profound melancholy never truly left the island. It remained a place where the wind whistled through empty volcanic crater and the wave crashed against a coastline, littered with the fragments of a lost world. The curse of the fallen Moai is the realization that immortality in stone is the poor trade for the life of the land. It is a haunting witness to the moment when human ambition finally outstripped the earth's ability to provide, leaving behind a beautiful, broken sanctuary at the end of the world. At the pinnacle of our list lies a wonder that is not merely a site of archaeological interest, but a high-stake fortress of the dead, the Terracotta Army and the tomb of the First Emperor. Located in the Shaanxi province of China, this is arguably the most ambitious funerary project in human history. To protect his journey into the afterlife, the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, the man who first unified China, commits a silent, clay legions of over 8,000 soldiers, chariots, and horses. But the army is merely the outer guard. Beneath a massive, man-made hill nearby lies the imperial actual burial chamber, a place so fair and so heavily guarded by legend that, despite our modern technology, no one has dared to open it for over 2,000 years. This is the vantage of the first emperor, a masterpiece of imperial paranoia and later grandeur. The atmosphere surrounding the pit of the terracotta army is one of stifling gloom and absolute discipline. Each soldier stands with a unique face, an unblinking gaze, and a posture of internal readiness. There is the profound melancholy in the realization that they were not just statues, but a physical manifestations of a ruler's refusal to surrender his power to death. The curse here is rooted in the sheer cruelty of the imperial vision. Legends and historical record suggest that when the tomb was completed, the thousands of artisans and laborers who knew its secret were sealed alive inside to ensure the location remained a mystery. This act of mass murder created a haunting sorrow that many believe cling to the very dust in the site, a spiritual death that has never been settled. However, the true vengeance lies within the central, an open tomb. Ancient texts describe a subterranean palace that is a literal microcosm of the imperial earthly kingdom, complete with palace and science-nic tower, and miraculous mechanical crossbow designed to shoot any intruder who entered. But the most terrifying detail is the river of liquid mercury. The text claims that the imperial tomb contains an entire map of China, where the Great River and the Yangtze were recreated using flowing mercury, moving by a perpetual mechanism. For centuries, historians dismissed it as a myth, until modern soil tests revealed mercury levels in the area that are hundreds of times higher than normal. This creates a broadening tensions. A modern archaeologist to open the tomb is to risk a catastrophic release of toxic vapor, a literal breath of death from the first emperor himself. There is a sacred isolation to the imperial resting place. Queen Shi Huang was a man obsessed with immortality, drinking elixir of life that likely contained the very mercury that killed him. There is a haunting irony in his fate. The substance he thought would make him a god became the poison that guarded his grave. The curse of the Mercury River is a physical barrier that has successfully defined the curiosity of the modern world. It is as if the emperor's will is still a tie, a silent warning that his race is not be disturbed by the lesser men of the future. The grandeur of his vision remained intact, buried under layers of earth and an atmosphere of later mystery. Today, while millions of tourists marvel at the terracotta soldier, the imperial actual tomb remains silent, green-covered mountain, watching over the silent army. It stands as the ultimate testament to the pride of immortality. Queen Shi Huang achieved his goal. He is the only ruler in history whose final sanctuary remained completely unviolated. It is a mechanic masterpiece of defiance, a reminder that some secrets are protected by more than just stone and sword. They are protected by a legacy of vengeance that even time cannot erode. In the quiet of the Sanxi Plain, the first emperor still ruled his kingdom of shadow, a court by river of silver and guarded by legends that never sleep.